I blame it on Joe Rogan. I blame it on Joe Rogan. That's probably the biggest reason why I decided to take mushrooms for the first time in May 2016. I have been listening to Joe Rogan, his podcast, and he would bring on these guests and they would talk. They would go ranting about how great mushrooms are and how they're really good at opening your heart and perception, and you feel closer to your fellow humans, closer to the animals, closer to the plants. There was particularly this guest named Duncan Trussell, and he just spoke so poetically about mushrooms. And I'm curious. I like to try different substances, and up to that point, I had tried several other substances, right? Just to try and see. But for some reason, there was this idea drilled into my head. It's a brainwashing for nefarious reasons. That psychedelics will drill some kind of holes in your brain and do all kinds of weird things. So I never really I was 25 or 26 at the time, and I've touched things much worse than that, and for some reason just this idea was somehow brainwashed me, somehow found its way into my mind, that these are just like too dangerous to even go near. Funny enough, they're actually one of the safest psychedelics. But that's for a different video. So I was with a bunch of friends. I did not know they had mushrooms. We went to the waterfalls, beautiful place, and they pulled these mushrooms out and they started eating. They're like, "You want?" I'm like, "No, thank you. I'm not like, no." But then 20 minutes later, I changed my mind. I was like, "All right, give me." And they gave me 2 grams, which is a pretty good starter's dose. I guess they knew what they were doing, because I was just like, how much do I take? So I took it, and I was like in a beautiful place, and a waterfall, nature everywhere. And the mushrooms kicked in, and I suddenly, for the first time in my life, the first time, maybe I was a kid, I was like that, but for the first time in my adult life, I realized that I'm living in a 4K HD quality movie, right? Because I started looking around like, why is everything so bright? And I just started laughing. I got the cosmic giggles, right? Cosmic giggles when you just laugh at everything, because you just kind of like, you feel this like bliss. And I really, for the first time, I started to look at life as 4K. I was like, whoa. Everything's so crisp and clear, and everything's so colorful. And then I was looking around, I was like, wow, colors, look at that. Everything is like a 4K movie, man. It's crazy. Everything's so green and bright, and there was this red tree. It was so red. And so of course I was enjoying that, and then I was wearing shoes, and I looked at the shoes. I was like, why the fuck am I wearing shoes? And for the first time in my life, and I'm going to give a little background in a second. For the first time in my life, I took my shoes off. Not for the first time I took my shoes off, but I'll explain that to you. I took my shoes off. I took my socks off, and I looked at it. I was like, why the fuck am I wearing this? And I started going around, walking, because it's a forest, right? Walking around in the forest with all the mud and all the dirt and all the rocks and everything. Now, what I want to explain quickly to you, I've never went to the forest and walked barefoot, ever. I've done it before on sand, on a beach, right? But it never occurred to me. It never occurred to me. I just thought that's a dirty place. It's dirt. Wear shoes. You see? It never occurred to me to go walk barefoot in the forest. But I felt so connected to nature for the first time in my adult life. I felt this strong connection. Kids have that. Kids love nature. Kids will go barefoot in the forest, just naturally, right? But for the first time in my life, I was like, why am I wearing shoes here? Why am I putting a barrier between me and between the nature, between the earth? Why am I doing that? I mean, people do this in the beach, but very, very rarely will you see a person walking in the forest, because it's either too many rocks and I have sensitive feet, or it's dirt. Ew. It's dirt. Ew. It's mud. Ew. I didn't give a shit. In fact, it was absurd to me. Absurd. Why am I wearing shoes? Why am I putting a barrier between me and nature? So I took them off, took my shirt off. I was just in shorts at that point. And I went under the waterfall, and it was a cold waterfall. I was really into cold showers at the time, still am, just took one. And yeah, I went under the waterfall. breathed, and I screamed, like screamed, screamed joy, the scream of joy, the scream of connection, the scream of oneness with nature. And I walked on the rocks, and I started climbing, and I started, I just was like, wow, nature, I love nature. And I felt playful. I felt like a kid playing with nature. And I felt like I would be climbing these rocks, not crazy stuff, right? And I would just feel like every rock is there to help me. Every rock is there to support me. It's almost like I'm friends with every rock. I became friends with nature. With every tree became my friend. Every rock became my friend. The waterfall became my friend. And incredible. For the first time in my life, I connected with nature in a full immersion. With the exception of being on the beach, right? Because in the beach you do connect with nature full immersion, but in the forest with all these trees and all this life force there, I never connected to nature like that. Because I'm a city boy. I grew up in a concrete jungle. In fact, I grew up in Qatar, which is a desert. Zero trees there, zero trees. Okay, they're trying to grow more trees now artificially now. I guess it's good, but zero trees. I grew up in a concrete jungle. Everywhere is concrete. In fact, the area that I was in had big buildings everywhere. And came to Canada, wasn't that much different, just more trees. But I never really comprehended how connected we are as humans to nature. And then I was with my friends, we started talking, and then I looked at them, I was like, like in an absurd way, like I was like, what, how dare us humans? I looked at them, I was like, why the fuck are we away from nature? Why the fuck are we away from home? This is home. Why are we leaving the trees alone here? Why aren't we living with them? And it became for the first time, this is what I mean by I pierced the matrix. I broke it. For the first time in my adult life, I broke the matrix. I realized that humans build these cities and they completely separate themselves from the nature, from the rest of nature. That thought, see, that was a revolution for me, because that thought never entered my adult mind. Like, it never occurred to me that, oh wow, humans are living in these cities. They're like, we completely separate ourselves from nature. It never occurred to me that. And I felt like this, I had this moment, I broke the matrix. I was like, wow, that's the matrix. I literally saw this like from a higher perspective, like, oh, there is the city, that's for humans, and there's the rest of nature. That's we have nothing to do with that. We neglect it. We don't care. We just exploit it. I was like, why do we do this? And I talked to my friends, like I was like, why do we do this? And they're like, I don't know. Why do we do this? And we were baffled. Why do we do this? Why aren't we here connecting? Why aren't we here? Why aren't we living in harmony? Why aren't we living alongside nature? And then yeah, the rest of the day was beautiful and amazing, and I felt this incredible connection to my friends. One of my 3 friends was like, I've never met him before, right? He was a friend of my 2 other friends, and I became really good friends with him. In fact, it's funny because the most resonance I had in that trip was with that one friend, and I love that. I really love that about psychedelics. If you do it in the right setting, you really feel the brotherhood and the sisterhood, even with so-called strangers. I realized that stranger is my brother, and in fact, we really resonated. He was an Egyptian guy. I remember him, God bless his soul. I've only seen him once. I've only interacted with him once, but I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it, because we really had a resonance. His thoughts, in fact, his thought pattern, his way of thinking matched my way of thinking more than my other 2 friends. God bless their souls too. We had a great time. And then here is really where the revolution happened. It wasn't so much in the trip, but after that, and not just the next day, not the afterglow, not the next day, but after that, I would walk around in the streets where I lived in a city, and for the first time in my adult life, I would look at the trees there and I'd recognize there are trees. Before that, it's just like nature was non-existent in my world. It was like, if you wanted some nature, just go to where the designated nature areas. Just go for a walk in the forest or something. and just go be there. But something changed where I started to look at trees. I'd be just walking in the street, I'd be like, oh, hey tree. You know, I feel like I'm like, something happened in that trip where I really did pierce through that matrix of separation between humans and the nature world, because I would feel a strong connection with the trees, just the trees in the streets, for instance, right? And I began to be more aware that, hey, we are nature, we are part of nature. I'm sure some of you guys have experienced this, where you just had this first ever realization, humans are just separating themselves from the nature world, and it's not good for anybody. So that was really amazing. That really connected me with nature. First time full immersive connection with nature. I could never ignore the existence of trees again. I could never ignore the existence of animals again. If you like this content, subscribe. Make sure to like this video, guys. If you liked it, if you enjoyed it, like it right now, and I'll see you in the next video.